I see a surprising, well, maybe not surprising to us, but surprising to many, interest on the part of a large fraction of the public in doing the hard work of thinking through complex issues and not defaulting into overly simplistic assessments. There is a huge audience for this. There's no question about it. On the other hand, it is genuinely threatening to those who wish to maintain or capture power for its own sake, and they will therefore take up arms against it, and in fact they already are. So what frightens me most in the US, and I think it's really a general problem across the West, is that the freedoms that are, for example, so well delineated in the American founding documents are not built for an environment in which the public square is now living on private servers. So the ability of tech platforms, for example, that align with one of the parties politically to banish people who voice ideas threatening to them under false pretenses, that power is immense, and their willingness to wield it is quite clear. So, in the U.S., people will recognize that in the aftermath of the insurrection at the Capitol, there was a wave of banishments from social media, but the cover story that was effectively delivered, that these were fringe conservatives, that these were people from the far right, doesn't stand up to scrutiny. And I would point out, as you alluded to earlier, that these same forces that banished many accounts from social media in the aftermath of the insurrection event also banished the unity movement, which is the movement I started in the U.S. to beat the duopoly at the electoral game. We were thrown off of Twitter under false pretenses. We investigated the claims that were made against us. There was no truth in them, and yet the account remains suspended to this day. And there's no rational basis on which it might be accused of being far right, because in fact the movement was built to be non-ideological, non-partisan, and to sit dead center. So there is no question. The platforms have immense power. They are willing to wield it, and they are willing to wield it against anything that threatens them, including the truth.
Yes, I was going to come to this very interesting question of the political movement that you set up, Unity 2020. Can you just tell us a little bit more about it, Bret? And you plainly saw the failings on the part of the two major parties. You wanted to occupy the centre, or at least, I guess, I would say, without wanting to put words in your mouth, create an environment where you can have the high quality exchange of ideas. That is the only way you arrive at the best possible policy outcomes and get the maximum buy-in to those ideas. And I assume that's where you were trying to position yourselves. Can you tell us a little more about it and where you see it going now?
Yes. So the proposal, the Unity 2020 proposal, involved taking two people, one from the center right, one from the center left, pairing them on a team. That team would come together under the agreement that all decisions made would be made jointly, except in circumstances where that was impossible, for example, where something did not present enough time to make a joint decision. But in effect, a power-sharing arrangement between a capable, courageous patriot from the left and a capable, courageous patriot from the right, that one of them would be determined by coin flip to run for the top seat, that is the presidency. The other would run for the vice presidency, and after 4 years, the roles would reverse, and hopefully they would be reelected. And in this way, everyone could be assured that this was not a power grab from one side against the other, but it was really the reflection of American ideals and a willingness to compromise and find what's best for the nation. So in any case, that created a stir. I think there's some possibility that the success of the term unity in gaining people's attention and raising their interest may in fact be part of what spurred the Democratic Party to embrace this term, what I would say is cynically in the run up to the election and in their publicity since. But we did run into several different obstacles. One of them was that the tech platforms were not interested in any challenge to the duopoly, and in the end, they allowed our detractors to trigger mechanisms that got us thrown off the platform, even though the accusations were simply false. The other thing we ran into was fear by people on both sides that there was no freedom to depart from their official party ticket without empowering the other one. Now, we structured the proposal to minimize the chances that we could have a spoiler effect on the election. But nonetheless, Americans have been so trained that the only choices that they are allowed to make are major party choices that they were slow to recognize that the plan had a built-in immunity to the thing that they feared.
And talking of unity, COVID, it strikes me as very interesting and concerning that one would have thought a common enemy like COVID might have pulled the American people together. In fact, from where we sit, it's not immediately obvious, I'd have to say, that that has been what's happened. What do you think the whole COVID experience has said about modern America as opposed to the America that has pulled together so effectively on so many issues, but including of a global challenging nature in the past?
Well, I think it's revealed some very unfortunate things. In fact, it's revealed that some American strengths created a vulnerability in this case. But I would put the revelations in two categories. One, there's something about the basic American character and our desire to champion freedom as our highest value, something which I believe is legitimate, that upended us because incursions on freedom, which were necessary to control the virus, were viewed with suspicion, in part because they were wielded by a government that people don't trust. So that caused us to shoot ourselves in the foot, more or less. We have a much worse problem with COVID than we should have had because the issue, instead of galvanizing us, which I agree it should have, polarized us, and both sides used the matter for political advantage and signaling. And this caused us to waste valuable time, to misplay the epidemic such that many more people got sick than would have. And to this day, it is hampering our efforts to control the virus, which is going to have negative impacts on the world.
Yeah, there's a sense in which this might seem a long bow, but I think of the America of the past, the America that has taken such a global leadership role since the end of the Second World War. The magnanimity towards opponents, the recognition that you win people over by reaching out rather than by clobbering them, has had a great deal to do with the fact that we've had really, people seem to contest this, but years of peace, relative peace, and progress. The number of people globally that have been lifted out of poverty, that have enjoyed more political and personal freedoms and so forth, has a lot to do with what happened after the Second World War, when, having perhaps learnt the lesson of the stupidity of the way in which the Allies dealt with a defeated Germany in 1918 after 1945, just to think of, to highlight two examples, the extraordinary way in which America set out deliberately, intentionally, cleverly and wisely to win Japan back a place, if you like, at the table of nations, and is now a great friend and ally. And then you think of the Marshall Plan, a smashed Europe, and America still dealing with very, very large debts and fallout from the war itself, finding $13 billion at the time to rebuild Europe, attached wisely the right strings. This money is available if you break down your trade barriers, if you do this, if you open up, if you reform, and it all happened. That was an example of, and par excellence, if you like, of of magnanimity towards those who had been your enemies, that seems to have completely gone out of the door in this power struggle that we now see between opposing forces. That bigness of spirit, that generosity of spirit, that wisdom.
Yeah, I think we have lost sight of our greatest strength, and we have defaulted into a much more cynical, much less capable prior mode in which we view our enemies as inherently defective. And in fact, we all too easily view them as something less than human. It is, in fact, a property that people have before they go to war on another population or commit genocide. So we have begun to view even our political enemies within our own nation as so broken as to be not worthy of standard human dignity.
Thank you for watching this episode. We appreciate your support. If you value vital conversations like this one, be sure to subscribe to the channel there and also click the notification bell to stay up to date with new releases.